Well, thank you very much for inviting me up here, and thanks to the preceding panel. I think that group definitely provided a lot of food for thought for the discussion that I want to lead right now. So we're talking about sustaining and growing the ad-supported TV model. I think that's really important. As I dive into that discussion, there are three kind of main questions that are central for me. So one, I want to make sure that we properly define ad-supported television. Second, I want to look at the threats, perceived threats, the real threats to ad-supported TV. And finally, I want to look at what it will take to sustain and grow ad-supported TV. So starting in with a definition of ad-supported TV. We all kind of have, this one image that comes to mind when we think of television. We think of professionally produced content. We think of really strong reach across all demographics. We think of high advertising impact driven by a properly captivated audience. And we often think of this 1950s black and white image of a family together watching scheduled content that they know and love. All of the strengths of TV from that previous image still exist, but TV really has evolved quite significantly over the past 60 years. Right now, the way that I would define TV is really, I see a tremendous explosion of content, tremendous video on demand, multi-screen access, and personalized content discovery. So TV viewing right now is this amazing personalized experience where consumers can watch whatever they want, wherever they want, on whichever screen. It's quite a powerful experience right now. So when we really dive into the precise definition of ad-supported TV, historically we've really been focused on traditional linear TV itself. But at this point in time, I think there are really two larger categories that we need to keep in mind. The first category is broadcast and set-top box ad delivery. Within this category, we have traditional linear TV, addressable linear TV, and set-top box video on demand. In the second and new emerging category, we have streaming ad delivery driven by broadcaster video on demand, TV everywhere, and direct-to-consumer applications, and virtual MVPDs. I think it's important to note that not all of these different options are available in every market across the globe, but I do think it's a common theme that in each market, each of these categories are kind of emerging in their own various manifestations. So to the big question, is ad-supported TV under threat? There are two key questions that we need to answer as we look at this. So the first question, are viewers leaving ad-supported TV for alternative video viewing outlets? And the second question, are advertisers diverting spend to alternative advertising outlets? Bear with me now, I'll have a couple of graphs, but not too much. I promise it won't be too painful. Just want to paint a little bit of a picture. So the first kind of alternative viewing outlet that we need to consider is SVOD. Everybody knows the SVOD story. Subscription video on demand is growing at a strong pace in all markets globally, driven primarily by global players such as Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu. The next big category that I've heard mentioned a couple of times today is direct-to-consumer applications. So this is programmers building their own access points for content where they are bypassing cable subscriptions and going directly to consumers. We see that we're really kind of early days where most of the major programmers are focused on developing and releasing these applications. So we do expect to see a significant uptick across this category over the next 5 or so years. The final kind of alternative video viewing outlet is digital video. So this is a bit distinct from my previous two examples in that digital video is still supported by advertising as opposed to subscriptions, But the players for digital video are generally technology platforms like YouTube and Facebook, as opposed to the broadcasters driving ad-supported television. It's also important to note that digital video growth is driven primarily by younger demographics. But if we step back and look at ad-supported TV, it's important to note that in the face of these threats, at this point in time, it's definitely holding strong. We have seen some declines in linear television viewing, but generally, any drops in linear TV viewing has been offset by either time-shifted viewing or video on demand. Television continues to account for 71% of our video viewing day across the full population. For younger demographics, this number is more like 50% of the video viewing day. So if we move to the category of advertising, are there other channels that are pulling budget away from television? The first place that I tend to look is digital video. Video is generally complementary with television. They both offer sight, sound, and motion. And digital video is a category that's experiencing significant growth, especially within the UK. It's one of the fastest growing ad categories. And it's even forecast to surpass television ad spend by 2021. But it's important to note that this growth is not occurring at the expense of television spend. So while television spend is not experiencing the growth that it has historically at this point in time, it's still holding firm, and it is not dropping with an inverse relationship to digital video spend. So back to my main question, is ad-supported TV under threat? I would say definitely not for now. We see that TV is holding strong in terms of viewership and ad spend, but there are signs of headwinds. There are threats in alternative viewing outlets that should be taken seriously at this point in time. So how do we sustain and grow ad-supported TV? How do we ensure that TV remains strong, TV remains a growing medium supported by advertising? And for me, it all comes back to experience. I would be remiss as an Adobe employee if I was not talking about the experience of advertising. But as I mentioned before, I think the TV viewing experience is a great one. It's a really strong example of the power of digital transformation. Consumers, as I mentioned, can watch a tremendous variety of content whenever they want on whichever screen that they want. I think this serves as a really good example for advertising, and there's an advertising experience that we need to articulate and keep in mind as we strive to replicate the strength of the experience of the TV viewing experience itself. So I want to make sure that the notion of the advertising experience is clear. For me, there are really two key components of the advertising experience. So one is the ad viewing experience. The stakeholders in the ad viewing experience are interested in making sure that the advertising is aligned with the audience. Viewers want to see ads that are interesting to them, and advertisers have an interest as well in making sure that ads align with audiences to drive better performance for their campaigns. In turn, there's an ad transaction experience that works hand in hand with the ad viewing experience. And the ad transaction experience, agency buyers, broadcast sellers are really invested in seeing an easier and more sophisticated process for enabling advanced audience trading. So the good news is that we really know more about our customers than ever before. And when we talk about our space specifically, most brands are employing a DMP. Most brands have a very clear idea of what products their consumers are purchasing, what pieces of websites they're visiting, and even which products they've left in a shopping cart and abandoned before purchase. This is really powerful raw material that enables us to drive a highly personalized, sequential communication strategy across all marketing and advertising communications efforts. The exception, the outlet that has kind of stayed outside of this communications experience to date is television. And that's kind of the bad news of the story. So in spite of the fact that we have such incredible data at our hands to drive advertising and marketing communications, majority of brands and agencies would say that it's still very difficult to connect all of this data to the buying process for television. So how does this impact the ad experience when we have a difficult time activating these advanced audiences in television? Well, it forces us really to default to age and gender-based targeting. Age and gender-based targeting has really been the basis of all transactions in the television space since its inception. It's provided strength, it's provided standardization, and it's been a really important bedrock of the industry. But I do want to share two cases that really point out its shortcomings. So in each of the following two cases, I want to look at individuals who would receive the same ads based on age and gender-based targeting. And for this example right here, we have two males within the 18 to 54-year-old category. On the left, we have an 18-year-old university student renting an apartment with a couple of his best friends. On the right, we have a 54-year-old male who has 30 years of industry experience, has a family, and owns a home. In another example, we can take two women of the same age, both in their mid-20s. The woman on the left is a suburban professional, recently graduated from an MBA program. The woman on the right is a suburban mother with two young children. In both of these cases, these individuals would be treated equally by advertisers, setting up campaigns, determining where to distribute ads. Very effective for plenty of brands, but for others, there would be cases where the woman on the left would not be interested in seeing the ads for the woman on the right. So this points to a bit of a disconnect in the alignment between the audience and advertising when we focus specifically on age and gender. Another point that's really important is frequency. We know that individuals exposed to the right level of frequency have a positive experience with the brand. They come away with strong brand recall, strong brand favorability, but as the frequency increases, that experience is less positive. And we're left with the situation where viewers are frustrated by the fact that they're seeing the same ads over and over again. I think at this point, the consumer is far less likely to go out and market and to purchase this product or report a favorable association with this brand. And it's important to keep in mind that this frequency occurs across all screens in the TV viewing environment. So this is not linear television on its own. This is not connected television on its own. This frequency needs to be managed effectively across all of the various manifestations of television that I mentioned before. So a major key for the advertising viewing experience is that we need to serve relevant ads and optimize frequency. So the other side of the coin, when we talk about activating advanced audiences, leveraging digital data, new data sources to drive television targeting, we need to keep in mind the agencies and the broadcast sales teams that are managing this process. As we start to introduce new audiences, new currencies, it becomes increasingly difficult to determine value across the landscape of all of available media. Age and gender has served a strong purpose of enabling both sides of the negotiating table to understand what needs to be purchased to hit certain audience delivery goals. But as we start to introduce new audiences, we introduce new methodologies for forecasting, we introduce new methodologies for measuring delivery, and this can really kind of lead us to a point where there's eroded trust in the transaction process. And finally, as we move beyond simply the process of determining value across the inventory landscape, I think we also need to speak to the fact that buying TV itself is a difficult process. Buying TV from an operational perspective, when you're activating advanced audiences across screens, is even more difficult. The digital world, I think, has done a better job of providing more user-friendly, dynamic, and precise tools for setting up campaigns and selling inventory. I think the television world, both sides of the transaction, agencies and sellers, would really benefit and would really appreciate tools that would enable them to sell, buy, manage, and report on advanced audience campaigns. So in the transactional space, my major key is that we need to make cross-screen advanced audience trading easier and automated for buyers and sellers. So presented a vision where we have a significantly improved television ad experience. We have the right ads going to the right viewers, driving effective performance for brands, and we have agencies and sellers who are seamlessly managing campaigns, managing the buying and selling process to make sure that the right ads are directed to the right individuals and the right screens. This is not an easy vision to achieve. It's certainly a very complex vision. It's certainly quite a heavy lift. And I want to talk about some of the requirements for achieving this vision. And for me, it really comes down to new data sets like smart television, set-top box data, and cross-screen panels to supplement the traditional existing panels. Another valuable component would be data sharing between cable operators and programmers. I certainly understand the commercial complexities of this agreement, but I think it's certainly something that has a lot of value for the full space when it comes to increasing the availability of addressable television inventory and also making measurement across screens and attribution much easier. When we move back to the transaction side of the table, I think we definitely need advanced audience trading standards. The panels have done an extremely good job of regulating age and gender-based trading and campaign verification. As we start to enter this new kind of decentralized world where brands can bring data from any source that they want to determine the inventory that they want to purchase across screens and determine the value and the delivery of audiences across screen, we need to make sure that there are some rules ensuring that we can verify value. And we can make sure that we are talking about the same things when we're talking about purchasing and selling inventory. And finally, we really need improved trading technology to bring all of this together. It's a tall ask to ask agencies and brands to focus on a new way of planning and measuring campaigns. We really need technology to make this easier. And I think we need really new and specialized technology to make sure that we are able to optimize ROI for advertisers and optimize yield for broadcasters. So I want to thank you guys for listening to my presentation now. Love to answer any questions.